Understanding Treasury auctions and the potential consequences of a failed auction. In recent times, the national debt and interest costs on that debt have become increasingly important. With the interest costs surging 87% since last year, it is clear that this is feeding into a growing budget deficit. Additionally, the money leaving the reverse repo facility at the Federal Reserve, Fed, is funding a significant portion of this debt. Analysts are now suggesting that the Fed should stop quantitative tightening before this repo facility is drained. However, all of this hinges on the possibility of a failed Treasury auction. In this video, we will discuss what happens when a Treasury auction fails and the potential consequences that follow. What is a Treasury auction? A Treasury auction is a process through which the U.S. government borrows money by issuing Treasury bonds. It operates similarly to any other auction, where the government sets a specific amount of money to borrow and an interest rate on that debt. The auction takes place multiple times a week, and the U.S. Department of the Treasury is responsible for issuing the debt, known as treasuries. How does a Treasury auction work? During a Treasury auction, there are two groups of buyers, individuals and institutions. Individuals can only place non-competitive bids, meaning they have to lend at the rate set by the government. Institutions, on the other hand, can place competitive bids, offering a specific interest rate at which they are willing to lend. The auction starts with individuals lending at the government's stated interest rate. If the amount borrowed is not sufficient, the government turns to institutions offering higher interest rates. The government borrows from the bottom up until it reaches the desired amount. The interest rate paid to all lenders is determined by the highest rate accepted to fill the remaining debt. Normal conditions for Treasury auctions. In normal conditions, there is usually more money available to lend than the government intends to borrow. This bid-to-cover ratio is typically well above 2, meaning there are $2 or more available for every dollar the government wants to borrow. Additionally, the high yield or interest rate paid by the government is usually close to the initial rate set. The consequences of a failed auction. A failed Treasury auction occurs when there are not enough dollars available for the government to borrow, resulting in a disruption in the market. In this scenario, the government may not be able to borrow the full amount it needs, and the interest rate paid may be significantly higher than the initial rate set. Immediate consequences. If a Treasury auction fails, there would likely be a swift sell-off of U.S. Treasuries, causing a disruption in the market. However, the government would not default on its debt as it has funds in the Treasury General Account to cover the shortfall. Nevertheless, this would signal a significant emergency and require intervention from the Federal Reserve. Possible solutions. The Federal Reserve could restart quantitative easing, QE, or implement yield curve control to counteract the disruption caused by a failed auction. However, both options have legal and inflationary concerns. QE may not be explicitly allowed by law, and restarting it could exacerbate inflationary pressures. Yield curve control, which involves buying and selling treasuries to maintain a specific interest rate, may also face legal and inflationary challenges. The battle between the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury. If a failed auction occurs, there may be a short-term battle between the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury. The Federal Reserve's mandate is to maintain stable prices and maximum employment, and restarting QE or yield curve control could conflict with these mandates. Ultimately, Congress has the power to rewrite the Federal Reserve Act, potentially changing the role and responsibilities of the Federal Reserve. Conclusion. Understanding Treasury auctions and the potential consequences of a failed auction is crucial in comprehending the dynamics of the national debt and the role of the Federal Reserve. While a failed auction may not lead to a government default, it would create significant disruptions in the market. The actions taken by the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury in response to a failed auction could have far-reaching implications for the economy and financial markets.
As always, do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel, All Things Money, to see more content like this.